upuzi. Mahakama moja anasema ati ile kamati ya mbele huko ya kuteua wale wanachama wa IEBC ataendelee kufanya kazi yake. Nasema hiyo ni upuzi. Ni upuzi. Ile kamati hawezi kufanya kazi, manake ilikuwa tayari imevunjwa na bunge.
That's Raila Odinga, the leader of ODM, and he's reacting to the judgment by Mugure Thande, Justice of the High Court, who ruled that the selection panel should proceed to recruit the IEBC commissioners because the process had started. 925 applications had been received, 25 of whom were for the position of chair. That process was suspended because of the National Dialogue Committee conversations. But Honorable Mbui, let me begin with you on this one. So what do you think should happen? Because clearly there was no court order or any form of legal decision that would tie the selection panel from proceeding with their work. What happens now?
You know, the judges must be alive to the realities on the ground, because one of the things that we were agitating about was for a player to be the one that makes a decision on the referee that will be overseeing the game. And we said that we are uncomfortable with the arrangement on the new selection panel law, where they would be the ones, Kenya Kwanza would basically have a say, more of a say than the opponents. I mean, all over the world, whenever there is situations like this, even in sport, people bring in their best brains and then they work together. So we were uncomfortable, and that's one of the things we went to the streets about, not to forget that also, of course, a cost of living. Now, for a judge to make a decision and say, look, proceed, it means that already the 2027 election is predetermined. That's what we are fearing. And you know that in Kenya, it's not the people who cast the vote that matter. It is those that count the vote, those that oversee the elections. And that's IEBC. So for us, we are grappling here with a high cost of living, but with a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, because 2027 is fast approaching. And we believe in 2027, we can be able to correct the ills that we are going through. Now, suddenly, we hear a judge make a decision that means that 2027 might be a foregone conclusion against us again, meaning Kenyans suffer for another 5 years. So I think that's really unfortunate. We know that the National Dialogue Committee was put together to heal the nation. And everybody, including the judiciary, they have to be alive to that fact. You know, there has to be respect between the three arms of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Our opinion is that the judiciary should respect Parliament, because already this thing is in Parliament, and stop injuncting Parliament and making decisions on matters that are in Parliament. We know that in Parliament we don't discuss things that are in court, because there is a law, they call it, sub judice. So we don't discuss any matter in court. But why would they want to discuss a matter in Parliament? I think there's got to be that separation of powers, Sam. So there has to be a bit of respect for what we are dealing with, because that's one of the matters that is on the floor now. But
the Nelson Makanda team of 7 had already started work. There were no specific instructions from any court of law or even Parliament asking them to stop what they were doing. Sam, that's why I'm saying we must be, you know, we must be alive to the facts. The reason we went to agitate is because of the way this team was put together. And the NADCO report is addressing that matter on how the composition of that team, so that we can reconstitute it. And I get that. I'm just wondering, so how does the selection panel stop working? And how does Mugure Thande, Justice, realize that Parliament is already doing something about it, which actually it's not? No, Parliament is doing something because the report was just tabled. We are going to discuss it when we go back. The NADCO report came to the House after the deliberations. So, I mean, I'm just saying that all of us are alive to the fact that we have a situation at hand that we need to address. So the judge cannot operate and ignore those things that we all know. Okay. That there is a report. You see, Sam, the NADCO report cannot be taken to court. It has to go to Parliament. So he knows that it is in Parliament, and he knows that one of the major issues that we raised was the composition of that selection panel. So for them to say, let the selection panel continue. And I'll tell you this, one of the discussions and deliberations from the NADCO report was to tell the selection panel to stop and await the outcome of this process that brought all these players together. So, Sam, I think the reality is that it's... Can such a request or order or application hold? It should be able to hold, Sam, because it's for the sake of the country. Legally? Yes, it can, Sam, it can.
for the sake of the country. Remember the NADCO team was put together by Parliament. So that's why I'm saying separation of powers. If Parliament puts together a team with clear instructions on what to discuss, those issues that they're discussing, they tell the court, please hold on. They tell the selection panel, please hold on as we sort out this. How does somebody make a decision and say, you proceed? It means that's contempt to Parliament. I think for fairness, we are not, the country is not grinding to a halt just because we do not have IEBC. Let us get it right. Let us get this right
we'll talk
once
about
and
the
for all.
implication of the delayed appointment. Justice Thande says that compliance with the Constitution should not be suspended for the sake of political expediency. And I'm wondering, Wakili, where do you draw the line from? Because there's actually a political conflict that is going on, and that is what informed the National Dialogue Committee. So should the judiciary take note of that, and knowing where the process is now, what is the right thing to do?
Thank you. Normally, the judiciary deals with things before them. They don't deal with the rumors outside there. They don't deal with the stories that are collected outside there. People go before them and say, this is the issue. If you look at what the judge has said, the judge has stated the very obvious. The very obvious, we should not have even reached there, where somehow the selection panel appointed in accordance with the Constitution, somehow they just went quiet, saying, oh, we hear this, we hear that, we hear that. To the extent that time is running, timelines are not being met, and those timelines are in the Constitution. So you cannot tell the judge that we are waiting for some report, which after it comes out of Parliament, I can assure you now, and we will be back to celebrate that report, when it comes out of Parliament, the recommendations that I see were made, especially amending the Constitution, it will be nullified. The same court will declare it null and void, the way they did to BBI. Why? Because they have gotten it wrong. You don't call a few of your friends, send them to Bomas, and then they come out and say, amend chapter this, amend chapter that, or amend this. It will not work that way. If you want,
even if there is the decision by Parliament to constitute that panel?
Yes. Parliament cannot say, go there and amend the procedure for appointing commissioners of IEBC. Go and change it. Sit down there in Bomas, then make recommendations, go back to Parliament. If you want anything that touches the Constitution, anything, you have to follow the procedure in that same Constitution. That's why the BBI was celebrated. A lot of money went, and they were told, please.
What is that procedure in this case?
You have to choose either it is a people-driven or Parliament-driven.
So if Parliament decides...
Now, if it is anytime you are going to deal with parts that deal with money and structure of government, then it has to be almost people-driven. Parliament cannot just sit and say, oh, stop doing this, stop doing that. This comes, we said that about BBI. We are now saying, because of political violence and souvenirs on the head, to cool the country, this team was cobbled up and said, sit down, let's hold on. But it was done outside the Constitution. And that is why the judge simply says, please, you people, go ahead, finish your job. They cannot say, we cannot finish our job because we are waiting for anything, because that thing is not anchored in the Constitution. So what they are saying, let them say it. But the judge and other judges will continue to uphold the Constitution as it is. If they amend it, if they follow the procedure of amending it and they amend it, the judges will still fault it. So faulting them now is a mistake.
I wanted to clarify something.
Yes,
because you sound as if you insinuate that there are certain areas of the Constitution that parliamentary initiative cannot amend.
Several. In fact, parliamentary initiative can deal with very little portions, very little. Anytime you are dealing with structure of government, anytime you are dealing with money, then it is popular.
So,
and
no, that's not accurate.
It is.
If it begins at Parliament but touches on Article 255, is it?
Yes.
It has to go to a referendum, isn't it?
Yes.
So is it right to say that there are certain amendments that cannot begin at Parliament?
Yes. For instance, I don't want to take this time now explaining to you the structure of the Constitution, how. Parliament itself now cannot sit and say, look, we are not going to proceed to appoint the IEBC commission. You are not going to proceed to appoint IEB commissioners. Wait for us to commence the process of amending the Constitution. Amend the Constitution. Then you proceed. That cannot be. Their process as it is in the Constitution would have gone on if they wanted it. Then they themselves, they say, okay, the commissioners we have done, but we are going to amend the Constitution in such a way that we dissolve this one and put in a new one. Stopping it by phone or by letter or by rumors, that is where the court comes in and it says, no, you people, you are wrong.
Okay.
Don't do it.
Wakili.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
You'll correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
That because Code 256 of the Constitution says that a bill to amend this Constitution may be introduced in either House of Parliament.
Yes.
That is 256(1)A.
Yes.
But then this is 5. Subparagraph 5 says that if a bill to amend this Constitution proposes an amendment relating to a matter specified in Article 255,
yes,
there will be requirement of a referendum.
Yes.
Then I would say that Parliament can commence any amendment to the Constitution. But if it touches on certain provisions of the Constitution, which is 255, must go to a referendum.
Go back, Kidogo.
Is that correct?
That is correct, but go back, Kidogo. What he's talking about?
No, I just wanted to get that right because you said...
there you are correct.
You said that Parliament, the areas that it cannot begin, which is inaccurate. You said the areas...
I want you to get this. I was talking... I'm talking together with the report.
No, which is fine.
Yes.
I'm just concluding that.
Yes.
That there is no provision in the Constitution that whose amendment cannot commence at Parliament.
No. There is. I want you to read the BBI decision. Go and read it.
Okay.
Go and read it. There are areas that if you begin in Parliament, there's a problem.
I hear you. Senator Lekina, so Justice Thande said that, let me just get that right. Well, I'm missing it, but it's somewhere that this process, which she termed to be a political expediency, is not anchored anywhere in law or even the Constitution. Does this then mean that the entire National Dialogue Committee process, especially those touching on electoral reforms, would be null and void?
No, not necessarily. I think the judge, to some extent, is right in the sense that, one, decisions by judges, magistrates are made based on the evidence presented to them and the relevant laws and regulations. However, having said that, there should be a balance between court decisions and community order. And this has to do with the issue of principle of proportionality. If you look at what is happening in this country at the moment, there's a lot of tension. And my brother Mbui, alluded to the fact that we are the players. We had a very serious problem in terms of deciding how our referee should be appointed. I think that is the issue that needs to be dealt with. You know, a court can be able to make its decision based on the evidence that has been provided to it. However, we have got also to be alive to the fact that we need to have a balance on community order. So what is happening right now? One of the players is disgruntled, and the other player, who can make the decision, sees nothing, finds no faults, and wants to continue playing the game. So will that be a fair game? Absolutely not. So I think it now behooves us in Parliament to be able to expedite the process. I'll give you a very good example. Way back when my good friend, Professor P.L.O. Lumumba, was the head of the anti-corruption, he was removed by Parliament. I went to court. When I went to court, I got orders to retain his position. But for order to prevail in both Parliament and also EACC, Professor Lumumba saw it fit to walk out, you know. Until today, he's still claiming that his money, he has never been paid his dues, and I hope one day he gets paid his dues. But that order is still alive in the fact that that order was never vacated. So what we need to do is this, you know, we, as part of the players, are not happy, you know, are not happy with the current decision. So we have two options. One, we'll move to the Court of Appeal, because it's a high court decision, move to the Court of Appeal, and now present evidence that this is a matter which is alive in Parliament, you know, so that it doesn't become sub judice, that is trying to bring in order, to create a balance on the players and also community order. Because if now, for instance, the Kenya Kwanza administration goes ahead and appoints the commissioners, we know the circumstances that led to the other commissioners being kicked out. It is questionable, you know? Just because you became president, you decided that you are not happy with the way the referees, sort of like, carried out the game, it doesn't mean that you kick them all out and you bring in friendly people to kick them all out. So there was already an issue. So we've got to look at it. I will not fault the judge, but I will just say because he makes a decision based on evidence presented to them, the relevant laws and regulations. But now, it is now upon us to move forward and say, we do not subscribe to this because we are not going to be players in a game that we have no role in selecting the referee. So I think for me, the most logical way is for us to expedite the process. That report by NADCO is very, very important because our principal, who is the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga and William Ruto, met and decided, let's do this. Either they met physically or through proxies, that for us to be able to have order in this country, let us set up these men and women to be able to go and decide on the way forward. So I think, to be honest with you, I don't see us moving forward, and any work that is going to be done by that committee of IEBC is going to be inconsequential because that NADCO team wrote to them and told them to stop the process. Whether that instruction, which was sanctioned by Parliament, was submitted to court is something else to be looked into. So for me, I see that we have to proceed.
Justice Thande is saying that, again, let me just quote it, the intervention of this court is therefore justified, more so because the bipartisan talks are, to the best of my knowledge, not anchored in either the Constitution or the law. So can you really, because the selection...
No, listen, I think in that part, the judge could be wrong. And I'll tell you why. And I'll say why the judge erred in law. Is because Parliament pronounces itself through either legislation or motions. So when Parliament sat down through a motion, we passed a motion. That is how we pronounce ourselves.
But can a motion stop
Yes, it can.
a panel which has been appointed based on an act of Parliament?
Yes, it can, because that's how Parliament pronounces itself.
How does a motion override an act of Parliament, Senator?
Listen, let me tell you, I'll give you a good example. If we're in Parliament and one of our colleagues brings in a motion to stop a particular thing, if all the representatives of the citizens pass that motion, it is as if the citizens themselves are the ones who passed it. And that's why I'm saying we pronounce ourselves through motions and bills. Either way. And if you look at the whole process, the way issues evolve in Parliament, it can start either through a statement. If somebody says that this matter can be better pronounced by Parliament through a motion is introduced. Then, if they want it to be fully anchored in law, so that it doesn't only deal with that specific matter, a bill is introduced, it is discussed, it is taken into public participation, and then eventually it becomes an act of Parliament. So let me finish. So in this case, since this was a very thorny issue that was affecting the status quo of the nation, the stability of the nation, a balance of proportionality needed to be, anchored into any decision which is being made. We have seen courts says, you go out there, we'll give you some time, go decide, and then come back and tell us. In fact, very sober judges will normally argue and say, the two of you, can you take a few minutes and try and see whether you can agree so that I can intervene?
So, Senator, assuming that what you're saying is correct, that a motion can stop the operation of an act of Parliament.
Yes.
Assuming. Was there a direct motion that stopped the Nelson Makanda panel?
Well, there was a motion on the NADCA report that was adopted by Parliament. And for us to get to a point where Parliament is involved, let me tell you something. There's something very different with the BBI process and this NADCA report. Some of us were saying...
Please be specific with my
And I'll be very specific. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. This matter was introduced by the majority leaders in both houses. When it was introduced by the majority leaders, it was passed by both houses. Okay? So that was sanctioned by Parliament. I'll give you so I'll compare apples to apples. On the issue of, if you look at the issues of, let's say, for instance, sending troops outside the country. Troops, I don't mean police.
Yeah.
Troops.
Yes.
Military.
Yes.
There's nothing which is written in law that there's a law that has to be passed for them to be sent. It is a motion that is introduced to Parliament, and it is sanctioned in Parliament. So in this case, when this matter, which was disturbing the stability of this nation, was brought to representatives of the people,
right, and
through a motion, Parliament pronounces itself, I believe the court ought to have looked into those.
So what did the motion say?
That, first of all, the motion says that NADCO was established to be able to look into matters that were affecting the stability of this nation. So when NADCO was given a mandate by Parliament, then everything that NADCO did was binding.
Okay. So the motion was not specific as to saying the Nelson Makanda team should stop forthwith in the recruitment?
Well, whatever decisions that the NADCO, Parliament doesn't become specific. It now gives a mandate to that committee to be able to go in and pronounce itself. So that committee
but
wrote...
the only lawmaking organ in the country is Parliament, not NADCO.
Listen, we pronounce ourselves through committees. In fact, NADCO ended up being almost like a committee of the House.
Chaired by someone who is not a member of Parliament.
Well, if you look at our standing orders, our standing orders actually give room for experts to be brought in to the committee, and it doesn't specify. It says
Alonzo Musyoka is an expert.
Listen, yes, he's an expert.
He is.
What?
Absolutely, he's a peacekeeper. He's an envoy. He was a former vice president of this country. You can't belittle his expertise.
I'm not belittling.
No, that's why I'm telling you, he's an expert. If you look at the Sudan, the role that he played in Sudan.
Standing orders allow incorporation of experts.
Experts. And there's nowhere in standing order that says that an expert cannot chair. So don't go into that other line. There's nowhere it says. And I hope my brother, from Bomet can actually tell us whether there's anywhere that says that.
I think some.
If I bring him now to talk to me about labor issues, I can put him as a chair.
Not necessarily, but we can't shy away from the provisions of the law and the provisions of the Constitution. I think these arguments are insincere. We must accept the fact that there is a judgment that has been rendered by a court of law. That is very specific, quoting the Constitution and the law. And the NADCO report is not a legal instrument whatsoever. It cannot surpass the power of an existing law. It cannot surpass the power of an existing constitution. There was litigation, a judgment has been rendered. And the principle of dealing with the judiciary and judicial rulings is that if you're not happy with the ruling of a lower court, then you can appeal. So whatever argument that we are getting here, they should just be sincerely placed before a court of appeal and proceed with it. But that, having said that, the judgment that has been rendered by Mugure Thande should be a wake-up call to everybody, because then it tells us that the selection panel, once the selection panel is constituted by Parliament, it cannot be stopped. And therefore, that judgment effectively legitimizes the selection panel that is in place. And it will be interesting to see how that is going to be worked backward. It has never happened. The Chapter 15 constitutional commissioners have been appointed through competent selection panels that have been appointed through the procedures of the provisions of the Constitution. So to work backwards will indeed be very, very difficult. And that is why when you push things, you cannot cherry pick in this country. And to remind Olekin and Fred, you cannot choose what is right and cherry pick what favors you. If it is the rule of law, it cuts both ways. A judgment has been rendered. All of us as law-abiding citizens, we must abide by it. And let us not belabor trying to struggle of who is best placed to do what in this country. The NADCO is a gentleman's agreement meeting panel appointed, and it's working, and I believe that report will be tabled in Parliament. And as that report is processed in Parliament, it will also be alive to the rulings that are in court. That cannot be wished away. And to me, from my own understanding of procedures of the Constitution and the law, if the IEBC panel that is in place chooses to proceed, it can proceed without any inhibition. Parliament whatsoever has no powers to try and control and recall a constitutional, a selection panel that has been appointed and is in operation, unless probably done through the courts. So that's a tall order, according to me. Away from that, lastly...
What options do the political class have if indeed the desire to incorporate everyone or in the name of 9 panelists is to succeed?
The court has prosecuted all that. And if you listen to Mugure Thande, it has even made reference to the NATCO. And they said, yes, that NATCO is not anchored in law, because we are a country of the rule of law and constitution. We cannot choose when to follow the constitution and when not to. Everything, all matters of governance are guided by the constitution. And by the way, the court considered the wider interest of the public. The review of the boundaries is very critical, is the business of IEBC, and it must be done within given timelines by an independent body. That is one. Two, there are 2 constituencies that are existing without members of parliament for a long period of time, and in fact, it is wrong for Parliament to proceed with business with exclusion of participation of some citizens in this country. NATCO report, I don't know how it will end. I'm not part of Parliament, but then I believe the rights of the people is paramount, and therefore the selection panel is vested with the responsibility of conducting appointments procedurally. What I hear loudly now is that even those names will have to be vetted and approved by political parties. That is wrong. That is not the spirit of creation of IEBC. IEBC ought to be absolutely independent. Sami, we've had these talks out there that, no, we are not going to accept any names unless approved by us. That is hijacking IEBC.
What if the members of the selection panel...
And I think...
Honorable Session,
yes?
What if the members of the selection panel resign?
That will be a different matter. They have not resigned. As we are in this studio, they have not resigned.
How would a new panel be appointed?
If they did, and that thing, and the panel is dead, then you go back to Parliament to start afresh. Yes.
You go back to Parliament.
Let's listen to...
Yes. But as long as it is in place...
Let's listen to Raila Odinga on what he said about this matter.
Sasa hii ripoti ya kina Wandai na Kalonzo ikienda mbele ya bunge ipitishwe, ndio tutaanza mambo ya IEBC. Walikubaliana ya kwamba mambo ya kuunda upya ya tume ya uchaguzi mpaka tushirikishwe, mpaka tukubaliane na majina yote.
All right, so there has always been that question, but let's speak about the substantive challenges that the country faces. And you raised one of them. You said that there are 2 constituencies that have no member of parliament.
2 constituencies.
I know of Banisa. Which is the other one?
I don't have it off it, but there are 2 constituencies without members of parliament for a long time. There could be a lot of pending civic wards also without representation. And IEBC ought to exist through and through, because you cannot predict circumstances of when officers will fall vacant. Any office can fall vacant in this country. And that is what the Constitution envisaged, so that there is no constitutional crisis and there is no vacuum. And the court is alive to that. And the courts have duty and responsibility to interpret the provisions and guide the country accordingly. And I think it has been guided. You see, it is the first time that we are not having by-elections in constituencies, simply because we are arguing on who should sit in IEBC we've already constituted the selection panel as per actually a statute that was created by the handshake regime.
Which is now...
That's a fact. That's a fact for the matter. And that law has worked as it was designed, and the process has begun. And you see, the president was very magnanimous to allow reconversation of the same. But you see, the president has been reminded by the court, and the country has been reminded by the court, that the NADCO is not entrenched in law, it's not in law. The country is in a serious crisis, and therefore
that in that team last year.
Well, of course, with the pressure that of course was prevailing in the country and all that, the president was magnanimous enough and allowed lots of conversation through NADCO. That's a fact. But you see,
does magnanimity also include outside the Constitution?
Not really outside the Constitution. But you see, Kenya as a dialogue country, we go a step further beyond and allow more space for dialogue, which is good.
Okay.
It's part of our practice. And therefore, I think the NADCO report will get to Parliament, but how it is going to supersede a ruling that has already been pronounced...
You don't know how that will happen.
It will not work. Because the intention of NADCO with respect to IEBC was to constitute a completely new panel away from the one that has been constituted, which you have asked whether they are going to resign. I don't think any one of them has resigned, and they will not resign. If they don't resign and decide to proceed without any reference to anyone to conduct the selection process, they will. They are protected by the law, and therefore they've also been emboldened by this judgment.
Despite the expected outcome,
the process of selection of commissioners and chair ought to be independent.
Okay.
That is why it has to be done by a selection panel.
Oh, all right.
That selection panel has been appointed. It is protected by the Constitution, and the court has pronounced as such. So, in fact, the chairman of the selection panel, without reference to the president, to anybody, and to any political party, and those who are comfortable and discomfortable, can proceed and conduct the selection of the chair of IEBC and commissioners from where we are.
Just briefly.
They can.
If you look at the reason why I keep on saying I believe the judge erred in law, and this is a matter that can be dealt with in the Court of Appeal.
Yeah.
And I also actually said the judge made the decision based on the evidence that were presented to him. But if you look at Article 250, subsection 4 of the Constitution, and Article 10, subsection 4 of the Constitution, 250 talks about the composition of the IEBC. And in fact, it says the appointment of commission of independent officers shall take into account national values mentioned in Article 10 and principle that of the composition of the commissioners and officers taken as a whole. Now, if you go to Article 10 of the Constitution, subsection 10, it talks about something very, very, very important. And if you read 4 says, give me 1 second, 10. It talks about 10A. It talks about patriotism, national unity, and sharing and devolution of powers, the rule of law, democracy, and participation of the people. Now, if we are talking about national unity, and part of about 60% or 50% of Kenyans are feeling disgruntled, is there national unity there? So I think the decision to constitute NADCO was to ensure that we comply with the Constitution, particularly on issues of national unity. You know, so I want to emphasize on that part. And since this matter is to be approved by Parliament,
you said 10 what?
10, sorry, not 10.4. If you go to 10, Article 10, 2A.
2A, okay.
The national values and principle of governance include patriotism, national unity, and sharing and devolution of power, the rule of law, democracy, and participation of the people. So if 50% or 60%, let me be fair, 50% of the people say we are not satisfied with this process. That is against the Constitution, you know. So whatever happens in Article 254 should take into effect what is contemplated in Article 10, 2A, that we need national unity, we need patriotism. If I don't feel like this selection panel will be able to take care of my interest as a Kenyan, then by all means, I have to seek an alternative.
And if you wait, how do you determine 50%?
Well, it's not quantum physics. You know, it's very simple. In all elections, Raila has gained more than 50% of the votes that have been cast.
Are you really sure?
And, absolutely. But, when he was with us, he would agree with me. But now, because he's on the other side,
those
he wants to get his food.
We appeal.
He has to say, are you sure? But let me finish. Let me finish my thought.
Senator, how do you make the support of Raila Odinga in the last election to represent their views about IEBC selection?
I've just told you it's not quantum physics. People who are on the streets, people who are disgruntled, Kenyans are not feeling the national unity. They are not feeling patriotic enough. So whatever you do, which is contemplated in Article 250, subsection 4, it relates to Article 10.2a, national unity, patriotism. Those are things that must happen in this country. And I've told you, even when you are determining matters, you've got to think of principle of proportionality.
Right.
It is, are we going to be happy? And that is why my brother, Mbui, brought up the issue of the referee. Who selects the referee? Should the players have a role? Absolutely. But then since we could not agree with that, Senator, since we could not agree on that aspect, let me just I'll finish it. Let me finish this. Let me finish. We are not, everything that we do is guided by history. Some of these things have happened in the past. So we cannot change the rules of the games midways. We had a highly contented election in 2017, 2022. We need to think. We need to think about the future.
Okay.
So now we're saying, and I want to appeal to judiciary, because I have a lot of respect for judiciary, and I'll always defend judiciary. I want to appeal to judiciary to look at the principle of proportionality, to look at the issue of national values, to look at the issue of patriotism. Are we patriotic enough? Are we happy by seeing people on the streets fighting on a daily basis? If anyone, let me tell you, even the court, the last part that I'm saying is that there is also alternative.
Because you need to make progress.
There's alternative.
Honorable Mbui, tell me.
That's my job.
I know of Banisa not having an MP since he passed on. And Honorable Sosyono, you said that we have not had a situation where a by-election has not been conducted. In 2020, during the COVID period, there's some seats that are not filled because of the COVID situation.
In fact, there are 5 pending by-elections across the country.
For MCAs or MPs?
MCAs are 2, 3, and Parliament 2.
So when there's a constituency, Honorable Mbui, that is not represented, how does it work? Who represents the aspirations of that constituency?
Yeah, Sam, I think it's unfortunate that any citizen in the country would be paying taxes and they have no representation. It's an unfortunate situation. But sometimes, even though that may not be a good thing, we have to look at the bigger picture. And that's why I think the main thing we need to do now is to expedite the acceptance or rejection of the NADCO report so that we can move forward as a country. Because in this report, the proposals that will come are that there will be some bills that will be introduced through the NADCO report, some even constitutional. Also, there will be amendments to existing bills that would also be introduced so that we can be able to, carry the country together, all of us. I think, Sam, the reality is that we are highly divided as a country. I mean, almost everything that Kenya Kwanza says, I am wired in a way that I don't see any positives. And maybe there could be some positives, but it's because of these heightened political temperature that we've come through since the last election. And maybe something needs to be done. And one of the things we need to do is to make sure that we protect ourselves and our future votes. And that, giving us that opportunity to be able to play a role in this, gives us some peace of mind that we know that whatever is going on, we can be able to make a change. And Kenyans also need to know that the next votes that they'll cast will actually count. You saw the last election how badly divided it was. I mean, 3 commissioners went against the report of the chair of the commission.
The commissioners
and let me say this. Let me say this.
Don't vote.
Honorable Sosion,
votes are counted at the polls.
Honorable Sosion, this is not a heckling rally, so you need to relax. You know, you've been heckled in Meru until it has become part of your... But anyway, the reality is that we as a country, we need to come to a point of healing. We need to get together. We need to make sure that we speak with one voice. So it's unfortunate that having come from such heightened political temperatures, Kenyans need to know that the next election is going to be safe, and it's going to be in safe hands. And I think it's fair that we agree that we come up with a situation that brings us all together. I think that, for me, is a bare minimum. Because
so when you said that protect ourselves and the future vote.
Yeah, because
how does expanding the selection panel to 9
protect you?
No, how
does that sort that out?
I'm alluding to the fact that if one player is the one that is making the decision in who sits in the selection panel, ideally, then they may have a say in then who becomes nominated to sit in the IEBC commission. Unfortunately, when that happens, then it means that our future is in the hands of our enemy, political enemy. And that's what we are worried about. I think it's only fair that we make sure that this thing is and that's why I was referring to the last election. You saw 3 commissioners completely going against the decision by the chair. And they went out and issued a statement and said, this is not good. So that means we need to find a way to bring people together. Let's have some kind of cohesion going forward. So that we have one commission.
Will bring them together.
The selection panel will be able to bring in the right people. If the selection panel is not by itself already convoluted and representing the interest of one political player. I think the way it is currently constituted, we are of the opinion that our voices are not being heard. And unfortunately, we believe Kenya Kwanza can use this selection panel to put in commissioners that will be like the chairman, Chebukati, and there will be like 5 Chebukatis in that commission. Then what happens to democracy in this country? We are worried some, and I think it's a bare minimum. And let me say this, we are in agreement. The NADCO report is a representation of the 2 political players, because both sides of the political divide have agreed that selection panel needs to be changed and advanced and altered.
Sorry, because Wafula Chebukati is not here, what wrong did he do?
Oh, even the manner in which he announced the results, even the body language. I mean, it's just like the Supreme Court. Some things, you know, you can read body language. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that it was unfair, because even before he announced the results, he was already talking badly about, part of the political players. I think that was in bad taste, because even if you're going to rule against us, just read the results and finish there.
The arithmetics of the results.
How did it change the numbers?
I think up to now I still believe we won the election.
No.
And Chebukati changed the results. And you know why I'm saying this, why I'm saying this, Osion, is because some of the commissioners told us that those figures that were given to us, when the results that were given were not accurate. So that's, I believe,
the commissioners participated with us
and gave us a verdict at the end of it.
They participated with us.
Let's not go there because we went through that. Went through the Supreme Court. Went through the.
Even you, Sami Gituku, you had your tallying station here. What did you get? How does numbers change?
It's difficult to make progress with.
It doesn't matter who you bring as commissioner.
You've introduced something that I don't know how to deal with. You just said that if we go to the chapter of lies, I don't know what that is. So
yes, we are getting to the chapter of lies. It's true.
Because before I let you go, I want to understand. So now we have a situation here. The current boundaries of 290 constituencies and 1,450 wards were gazetted on March 7th of 2012. 12 years expire next month on the 6th, meaning that the boundaries review should have happened by that time. Well, the preliminary work was done, but the commissioners have not been there to conduct public participation. It can also be a very emotive issue. So if an IEBC commission is appointed and goes ahead to do the boundaries review, would they be constitutional?
If they do it now, yes, it would be constitutional, because, I mean, they wouldn't have gone out of the law. because a court, a High Court judge did make a decision. But the reality is that it wouldn't be patriotic, it wouldn't be fair, it wouldn't bring Kenyans together.
Look, today is 5th. It's just a month to 6th of March.
Yes.
It is highly unlikely that that process will be concluded by that time.
Or you're saying if we are going to do it beyond the time. I think it's one of the things that we will have to address also in our discussions in Parliament, because we have to also look at the timelines and figure out how to, because these laws can be amended some, and even timelines can be extended, and those are some of the very basic things that we can do as a house.
The law allows that.
It allows that ability.
The law is very clear. The law says at least 12 months shall be at least 12 months before an election.
But the review is between 8 and 12.
No, it says, let me see, I can tell you that as a fact. I know that as a fact, that it talks about 8 years, a maximum of 12 years, but he also says that the review shall be completed at least 12 months before general elections of members of parliament.
So even if you do that,
so even if it is passed, so long as it's within 12 months before an election of members of parliament, then it's within the law.
I'm saying even if you gazette the boundaries by say March of 2026, which is more than 12 months before the next election,
yes,
that will be the 14th year, not the 12th.
That's fine. The law says a maximum of 12 years, but it shall be at least within 12 months before an election.
Okay.
That's what it says.
But the reason why, that's why we're in Parliament, and those are some of the things we can handle as a house.
Okay.
Because we are alive to the fact that there are certain timelines, and the thing is, if we are able to convince each other, we can actually make an amendment to even that timeline. It is possible.
Of the Constitution?
Yes, we can make an amendment to some
timelines. Wakili, but you have something burning.
Yes, burning. Because let's not engage in fishing expedition and trying to look for conveniences of certain private interest. The Constitution does not contemplate suspension and operation of IEBC. The Constitution contemplates full constitution of IEBC at all times. And that is why all these activities of IEBC, including even audit of the last general election, which should have been done by now to inform the preparation of the 2027 election, review of boundaries, are guided by timelines, with the Constitution contemplating that it should be constituted at all times. Right now, we are seated here when there is not even a single commissioner. This is a very grave constitutional crisis, which my brothers here are trying to massage it, to look at it, to look as if it is simple. This is not about those in government and those outside government. It's about the stability and constitutional order of the country, which all of us must subscribe to. According to me, I don't think it's right to come to the media houses and try and massage very serious matters.
Okay.
Non-review of the boundaries is a big constitutional crisis. Non-conduction of general election in certain units of representation for over 1 year is a crisis enough. And I think the ruling that the court has given, to me, as a great court user and understanding of constitution and the law and rights of people, is important. And, and therefore, there is need, if really they want to customize and engender what is contained in NATCO, please do it as fast as possible.
All right.
But then, trying to argue about who are the members of the selection panel, we are not comfortable with. The law created, and members of the selection panel are guided by the law and the Constitution.
All right.
They represent who, and that has been done. Why don't we have trust in our institutions? Trust deficit in our institutions is what is destroying governance, and it is what is creating incompetent leaders. Okay. You want to promote conflict of interest and bringing all these shenanigans that you are arguing. Even the chair of IEBC, cannot create numbers to declare. The numbers are created by the process of elections. Those are facts, and let us not...
As I agree with him, just one sentence.
No, you won't. Just hold it. Write it down. I'll give you an opportunity. Honorable Wakili,
yes.
Article 89 of the Constitution,
yes.
Sub-Article 2, the IEBC shall review the names and boundaries of constituencies at intervals of not less than 8 years and not more than 12 years.
Yes.
But any review shall be completed at least 12 months before a general election of members of parliament. And of course, the essence of reviewing is to ensure that the constituencies are as equal in proportion in terms of the numbers and, of course, the other factors that have to be considered.
Yes.
So if you are to have an election with the same constituencies or as reviewed after March this year,
Yes.
would they be constitutional constituencies?
To the extent that the review should have been done in the window between 8 and 12. Anytime we are going beyond the 12 years, we are outstepping the Constitution. And looking at it, we must at that stage say, here we went wrong. We made a mistake. And that mistake, there are other constitutional ways of correcting it. But we can't say, oh, no, within 12 months. Within the 12 months was basically to safeguard that you don't create your constituencies, then you go and get them. We told you you're supposed to create them early enough so that nobody takes advantage. That is the 12 months before elections. But 8 and 12 years was, over the 8 years, the 10 years, a critical mass of population has grown. So if we are dealing with proportional representation, then you are able to say, these people have grown, we need to divide this constituency. So to the extent that we have not done it, and we are not going to do it within the next 12, we shall have breached the Constitution. Now, let me also clarify this. My brother, the senator, is saying Parliament can also talk through motions. I think that is why we have problems, because those of us who have the blessings to be in charge of legislation and so on are themselves left, right. Let me stop it there. But Parliament is supposed to speak only in legislations. Yeah. Only. Just like court. A court is only supposed to speak in orders, decrees.
Judgments.
They do judgment, there's a decree. So that even if the chief judge say, oh, I'm going to play golf, and golf will be the official game of Kenya, we say, yes, we wait. We wait until they make a court order. If they don't make it, we say, that was hot air. So when now as a senator comes in and says, we said it in orders and whatever, that is wrong and is misleading. If they really wanted this NADCO report, they really wanted NADCO report to work, they didn't have to wait for it to be adopted. They should have simply gone back to the act that was used to do the selection panel. They would have just gone back to it and amended it and say, we are now expanding the number by adding additional 2. And because they had agreed privately with the president behind, they say, now we have added 2, and these 2 will give you names quietly. And then you'll appoint those names. Then you say, now we are set to
What do you mean quietly?
Quietly because it's politics.
Yeah.
Constitutional is also about politics and political deals. That is why there was no court order, but the selection panel was not moving. Why were they not moving? Because behind the scenes, there were deals that were said, hold on, because Baba is on the streets with the...
So
yes.
If they amended the IEBC Act, it was possible to add...
Yes, you see the selection panel, exactly. They would have simply amended and said, we are now increasing by how many people? 2 people. 2.
But you can't apply an amendment in retrospect.
No, it's not in retrospect. Because an act of parliament, they would say, look, before, as they proceed, you get it, my brother, as they proceed, the selection panel has been increased to this. And since we have 10 or we have 8, we can add the 2.
I'm asking this.
Yes.
So there's a selection panel led by Nelson Makanda. It's a 7-person panel.
Yes.
You're saying it was possible to amend the IEBC Act.
Correct.
Add 2 people.
Yes.
And appoint them to go and join.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
How? But that was not the law when the selection panel was created. You can only operationalize.
No, don't look at it that way.
Correct.
As long as the selection panel still exists, just like...
No, but a panel is appointed to recruit, to fill a certain vacancy.
Yes, but it has a life and work. During that life, just like today, if they all resigned,
You're moving away, and I need to understand what you're saying.
Yes.
There's a panel.
Yes.
You've amended the IEBC Act.
Yes.
The panel is existing.
Yes.
You want to appoint people to join?
To add, yes. You can amend and say we are adding 2 more. We are enlarging it. You can do that.
Is that how it works, Honorable Mbui?
It's not how. Let me, now I'm explaining the law. Now I'm not explaining parliament, because then they think even motions work. They pass motions and they...
You know,
allow me now.
Allow me to respond back to him.
So if they were really serious about IEBC and not sabotaging the country by putting roadblocks here and roadblocks there, they would have at that point said, our problem is that these people you have put in, we needed our own men, one or two. Then the same parliament that they are talking about would have just enlarged that committee, and then the two names are given. Power to appoint this has been vested in the president. Remember even 2007 when we fought vigorously in this country. When people sat down, it still went to parliament. Parliament spoke through legislation and told the president, now appoint. Now, this is what would have been done. But these things, they are not being used to ensure. They are being used to sabotage so that one day they say, President Ruto, you failed to appoint IEBC, you failed to follow the constitution, you failed to do this. That's why we are aware the court is saying, if you're not telling us anything, go ahead, do your work. If you don't do it,
we'll deal with it. Respond to what
30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. You know, the problem is that my good friend here is not a member of parliament. You know, he has never been elected, so he doesn't understand how the importance of motions. Motions are formal proposals. The moment we agree through a motion, it becomes easy to pass a legislation. And that is why I said clearly that Parliament pronounces itself through motions and bills. The moment a motion has been brought, the motion was tabled, the motion was agreed upon by all the parliamentarians. They passed that motion. You know, even a bill in Parliament is introduced through a motion. So I think he has to come to Parliament so that he understands how Parliament works. And I don't blame him because we have three arms of government. He is a customer of the judiciary. So he's used to orders and decrees, you know, and before you are given a decree, you're given an order. So the thing about my brother here is that he needs to understand that we are people's ombudspersons. We are representatives of the people. And when we sit there, we speak on behalf of the people. And now, to be able to conclude on that issue, I think it will be proper and in order for the judiciary to listen, to say what is happening in the legislative arm of government. Because hypothetically, if he says that, okay, they should have, you know, amended this law, we can amend the law anytime. But it has to be agreed upon by all of us. So the moment we agree, it is the law, and we would follow the Constitution. You know, I completely fault him by saying that if we amend the law, it is considered unconstitutional by the courts. No, only if we do not follow the due process of the law.
Okay. Honorable Mbui, your 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's possible to do amendments, some. The only problem is that in the heightened temperatures, political temperatures, we were not able to agree on anything. In fact, I will say that we did really oppose that bill when it came to the House. We really fought, but you know, it was pushed down our throats, and so we couldn't win. And again, I want to agree with the Honorable Senator that motions actually are one of the ways by which you communicate. And he was very clear. He said, if, for example, an international convention is agreed upon, it doesn't come to us as a bill. It comes as a motion, and then we agree on it, and it becomes part of Kenyan law. So it doesn't have to be a bill. Everything doesn't have to pass the House as a bill. But finally, you know, Honorable Sosion was, you know, I agreed with him almost 100%. The only part that I want him to remember is who unceremoniously kicked out the IEBC commissioners that has caused the vacuum that we are facing, because he seems to be shouting at us as if we are the problem. The Cherara team was actually unceremoniously bundled out of office by the
Parliament,
by the regime in office.
It was done.
That was
Parliament through
but you know, but it wasn't. We opposed it. We opposed it. Yes, because they were being taken through the you know, I don't know even what word to use, but all the same, let's just agree.
On IEBC.
Why is it that Sosion must speak when I speak?
You are friends.
You're my friend.
I think it's a hang-up of Meru.
Yes. Which parliament kicked out IEBC?
Yeah, of course, there was a motion in Parliament about it.
It comes again to motion.
Let's take a look at the...
And eventually there was a tribunal that was...
There's
about this motion
Senator said about me.
Sam Gituku is daybreak. Your mics are off. Now, Bob Otieno says that it's a welcome move to pay school fees on eCitizen. It will help curb corruption, and from extra charges schools have been charging parents, and evidence of fees payment to be easier to follow, unlike cash payments when a receipt gets lost. Engineer Lazaro, you're saying that the idea of school fees on eCitizen isn't all bad. Government should only conduct more research on how to divide funds to schools based on various projects and facilities run. So you're saying that utilizing eCitizen for school fee payment seems misguided, posing challenges for parents with added platform fees and mobile money transfer costs. It's disheartening to see profit motives overshadowing educational processes. Gadua Gashora, how about we also track our housing levy deductions on eCitizen? We want transparency everywhere. J. Musoma says that no court has mandate to stop a parliamentary process in regard to the doctrine of separation of powers. They should rather wait for the proposed laws and nullify what they deem is unconstitutional. NADCO was sanctioned by Parliament. That's its a legitimate parliamentary process. And Dashmore, you're saying that having those politicians choose who will be in IEBC is like having a wolf guard sheep. Let the recruitment be independent. We are tired of small politics, yet unemployment is real. That's your take, and so much more that is coming to us. We'll be looking at it. I have to thank you all, Senator Leda Molekina, Wakili Ambrose Weda, Honorable Robert Mbui, and Honorable Wilson Sossion for making time for us of this conversation. Up next is Sporting Monday. I hear Arsenal think they won the league last night. We'll be talking about that. Bye for now. My name is Sam Gituku. See you again some other time.